confirmed that Gwinnett County's SWAT team has Brian Nichols in custody.
Brian G. Nichols, born on December 10th, 1971.
Brian Nichols, a 33-year-old man, found himself in hot water in 2005. He faced some serious charges: rape, false imprisonment, you name it. The wheels of courtroom justice were turning, and Nichols was set to stand trial at the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia. As March 11th rolled around, tensions were high. The courthouse droned with activity that morning, lawyers and defendants shuffling about, but Nichols had something far more sinister on his mind than just facing the judge.
I don't know how this case is going to be tried, ever.
That was Monday, a dire prediction from the judge presiding over the Atlanta courthouse shooting trial. Now, after just 2 days of jury selection, the trial is again on hold, halted, because defense attorneys say they've run out of money and can't properly defend Brian Nichols.
I have a hard time knowing what I know about the state of readiness and the needs that are present in this case, that we're ready to pick a jury.
Nichols faces death if convicted of the shootings, which took place after he escaped from custody during a March 2005 rape trial. He's charged with killing the judge presiding over the trial.
It was March 2005 when Nichols escaped from the Fulton County Courthouse. That touched off chaos in the streets and a massive manhunt. Nichols killed 4 people, including a judge.
As Nichols was being escorted through the courthouse, he made his move. In a flash, he overpowered Deputy Cynthia Hall, snatching her gun and beating her badly. He burst into the courtroom, his stolen weapon at the ready. Judge Roland Barnes barely had time to react before Nichols opened fire, cutting him down where he stood. Court reporter Julianne Brandow met the same fate. Her life was snuffed out in an instant.
Gripped the nation, and this interview with Brian Nichols offers us the opportunity to look into the mindset of one of the most notorious active shooters in America, the most notorious in Georgia's history.
Cause any more damage what I have already done, and that's the main reason why I've always remained quiet.
The calls came from the courthouse shooter, Brian Nichols.
I did some very bad things.
His victims in March 2005, Judge Roland Barnes, court reporter Julie Brandow, Deputy Hoyt Teasley, federal agent David Wilhelm.
Doing an interview with you, there will be nothing that I want from that, really, other than to express my remorse for the things that I've done.
Panic erupted as Nichols fled the scene, people screaming and diving for cover. But his rampage wasn't over. Outside, he encountered Deputy Hoyt Teasley, who tried to stop him. Nichols didn't hesitate, gunning down the brave deputy before anyone could intervene. In the mess, he managed to steal a car and speed away.
Stole her gun and started his shooting spree. He evaded police for almost a full day before a woman he took hostage alerted police to his whereabouts.
As news of the courthouse bloodbath spread, Atlanta transformed into a city under blockade. Cops from every level, local beat officers to FBI agents, flooded the streets, hunting for Nichols. Schools shut their doors, businesses pulled down their shutters, and residents huddled indoors, glued to their TVs for updates. Meanwhile, Nichols was on a wild ride, ditching cars as quickly as he stole them. He'd pop up in one neighborhood, then vanish like smoke, always one step ahead of the law. Hours ticked and the city held its breath, wondering where this desperate criminal would strike next.
Presiding over his trial, a court reporter, a sheriff's deputy, and later a federal agent. What happened next would shock the nation and change the way courthouses would handle security forever.
As night fell, Nichols' desperation grew. He entered an apartment complex and, driven by instinct, broke into one of the units. Inside, he came face to face with David Wilhelm, a U.S. Customs agent who'd picked the wrong night to be home. In a heartbeat, the encounter turned deadly. Wilhelm didn't stand a chance against the cornered fugitive. With cold efficiency, Nichols added another victim to his grim tally, but he didn't stop there.
I hereby sentence Mr. Nichols to 20 years to serve, consecutive to counts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 32. Count 35 is another armed robbery count, and you know by now the armed robbery carries a life imprisonment, and I'm going to give him the maximum of a life imprisonment. That is consecutive to counts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 32, and 33. None of this will be served on probation. I'm not planning on giving Mr. Nichols any probation at all. neither am I planning on giving him a fine. Even though you may not like Mr. Nichols.
He snatched Wilhelm's gun, badge, and truck keys, arming himself further and gaining a new means of escape. The search had just gotten deadlier, and Nichols was still on the loose.
That hostage.
Yes, ma'am, I was that hostage.
Tell us what happened.
Well, you know, I was that hostage, but I was also a hostage to many other things during that time in my life. I was battling a drug addiction and was just really sad and angry, and a lot of things were going on in my life. So that specific event in my life, though, was something that really changed my life, because I realized that as this could be a chance that that my life was taken away from me, and for some reason God spared me through it all.
And you detailed the account of that night in your book, Unlikely Angel, and I have to tell you, I was riveted reading this book. And one of the things you gave every detail of those 7 hours.
I'm OCD.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you are. But something I really appreciate about the book is how transparent you were about your own life. Like, you didn't try to sugarcoat anything.
No,
warts and all, it's in here.
I didn't try to sugarcoat anything.
Just when it seemed Nichols couldn't be caught, fate took an unexpected turn. He barged into another apartment occupied by a young woman named Ashley Smith. Terrified, she found herself face to face with the man whose face was plastered all over the news. But instead of violence, something extraordinary happened. With trembling hands, Ashley picked up a book, The Purpose-Driven Life, and began reading aloud. Her voice, steady despite her fear, filled the tense air.
What's going on in you and your mind as all this is happening?
When I first turned around and saw him standing there, my first reaction was, God is so upset with me because I've been playing too many games. You know, I kept reaching out to God going, please help me, but then I kept making bad decisions and back and forth and back and forth, and I really thought this is what I deserve. I actually I just deserve to be taken home to die, because my life means nothing to God anymore.
Surprisingly, Nichols listened. They talked about faith, surrender, and the weight of his actions. Hours passed, and a strange calm settled over them. Ashley, sensing a shift, took a risk. She asked to leave for errands, promising to return. Amazingly, Nichols agreed. Once outside, Ashley's heart raced as she made the call that would end the manhunt.
He spent all day on the run, and that evening he went to a home in Buckhead and shot a federal agent before stealing his gun and pickup truck. His next stop was in Duluth, and that is where he pushed his way into the apartment of a woman named Ashley Smith. Smith had never met Nichols, but as he held her hostage, she was able to talk him into surrendering the next day. Nichols, later convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison.
As dawn broke on March 12th, the apartment complex was tense. SWAT teams crept into position, their weapons trained on Ashley's unit. Inside, Nichols paced, knowing his time was up. The standoff lasted mere minutes, but it felt like hours. Then, in a twist no one saw coming, Nichols walked out with his hands up. No more gunfire, no more bloodshed. Just like that, 26 hours after his courthouse rampage began, Brian Nichols surrendered. The city exhaled a sigh of relief as he was cuffed and loaded into a police van. In the wake of Nichols' rampage, Atlanta mourned. 4 lives were cut tragically short. Judge Roland Barnes, known for his fair rulings, Julie Ann Brandow, a court reporter with a ready smile, Deputy Hoyt Teasley, who'd served the community for years, and David Wilhelm, a dedicated U.S. Customs agent. Each left behind grieving families and a hole in the city's fabric. The sorrow, there was one small mercy. Deputy Cynthia Hall, the first to face Nichols' fury, clung to life. Her recovery would be long and hard, but she'd survived to tell the tale.
I don't know how this case is going to be tried, ever.
That was Monday. A dire prediction from the judge presiding over the Atlanta courthouse shooting trial. Now, after just 2 days of jury selection, the trial is again on hold, halted, because defense attorneys say they've run out of money and can't properly defend Brian Nichols.
I have a hard time knowing what I know about the state of readiness and the needs that are present in this case, that we're ready to pick a jury.
Nichols faces death if convicted of the shootings, which took place after he escaped from custody during a March 2005 rape trial. He's charged with killing the judge presiding over the trial.
Brian Nichols was a man with a dark past, facing a severe trial for charges of rape, false imprisonment, and other crimes as courtroom justice was served. On March 11, 2005, he was set to appear at the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia. But what was supposed to be a routine day in court became a nightmare. As he was being escorted to his trial, Nichols overpowered a deputy, seized her gun, and set off on a deadly rampage that would leave a community shaken to its core. Nichols stormed into the courtroom, where he coldly shot and killed Judge Roland Barnes and court reporter Julie Brandow. His violence didn't stop there. As he fled the courthouse, he encountered Deputy Hoyt Teasley outside and fatally shot him too. Later that night, in a desperate bid to escape, Nichols murdered federal agent David Wilhelm during a carjacking attempt. This shocking series of events left Atlanta in disbelief, mourning the loss of 4 lives in a single day of senseless violence.
And at the appropriate time, that case, if it's that, and held on with no bond until that time. Anything else, Mr. Adams?
No, sir. I would, well, one additional thing, right to remain silent and not be interrogated anymore on any of these charges, as well as for any charges on March 11th as well.
All right, thank you. Right. Mr. Nichols, I've heard before, but as your counsel noted, you have a right to remain silent, that any statement made by you can be used as evidence at hearings to call witnesses on your behalf. With the charges faced against you, sir, you have a possible life out with intent to rape, 20 years on aggravated sodomy. All right, sir. Anything else, Mr. Adams?
No, sir, Your Honor.
Anything else for the state?
Your Honor, yes. Mr. Adams and Mr. Parker are the counsel of record for the defendant at this time.
I am.
All right. Anything else?
Not from the state, Your Honor.
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. That will conclude the hearing.
Thank you. Okay, that's fine. All right. Just
The manhunt for Nichols was swift and intense. Authorities quickly apprehended him, and he was charged with a mountain of federal and state offenses, including the murder of a federal officer, multiple counts of murder, weapons charges, and carjacking. The severity of his crimes led Fulton County District Attorney Paul Howard to pursue the death penalty, a decision that reflected the gravity of the situation.
Cut off funding to the defense team on July 1st. Nichols' lawyers, who plan to argue he was delusional at the time of the killings, say they can't properly represent their client without more money, in part to hire expert witnesses.
I know that if this case goes forward without any additional funding, there's no chance of a verdict, if he were to get one, standing up.
Nichols' lawyers are now calling on the judge to level a contempt charge against the state agency responsible for funding the defense team. They asked the judge to halt jury selection, and he agreed. At a hearing next week, the judge will demand an explanation from state officials as to why they stopped paying the bills. Jason Bronis, The Associated Press, Atlanta.
On January 11, 2008, Nichols again faced the court, this time for his trial. His defense team pleaded not guilty because of insanity, arguing that Nichols was a troubled man, deeply affected by mental illness and a history of childhood abuse. They tried to paint a picture of a man whose actions were driven by psychological torment rather than cold-blooded intent, but the prosecution wasn't swayed. They laid out a case that showed premeditation and a clear, calculated plan to escape justice by any means necessary. One of the most compelling testimonies came from Ashley Smith, a woman who Nichols had taken hostage after his rampage. She recounted how she had spent hours talking to Nichols, using faith and empathy to connect with him in his most desperate moments. Her story offered a rare glimpse of humanity in a case marked by so much darkness. Despite the defense's arguments, the jury found Nichols guilty on all counts after 12 hours of deliberation. They rejected the insanity plea, concluding that Nichols knew precisely what he was doing. However, when it came to deciding his punishment, the jury couldn't agree on the death penalty. As a result, Nichols was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in December 2008.
I hereby sentence Mr. Nichols to 20 years to serve consecutive to counts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 32. Count 35 is another armed robbery count, and you know by now the armed robbery carries a life imprisonment, and I'm going to give him the maximum of a life imprisonment. That is consecutive to counts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 32, and 33. none of this will be served on probation. I'm not planning on giving Mr. Nichols any probation at all. Neither am I planning on giving him a fine. Even though you may not like Mr. Nichols, let's give a fair trial to everybody. Let's let them continue to be innocent until proven guilty. Let's give everybody a jury trial if they wanted it, and that's what Mr. Nichols wanted, and that's what he got. And let's treat them perhaps better than they treated everybody else. I don't want to make it personal, but at the same time, if I can save a life, do not trust Mr. Nichols ever again.
The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the jury foreman stood to deliver their verdict. All eyes were on Brian Nichols as he heard the damning words, guilty on all 54 counts. The prosecution team, led by the tenacious Larry Mackey, exchanged quiet nods of satisfaction. Their hard work had paid off, but the trial was still ongoing. The next phase was even more grueling. For days on end, the jury grappled with Nichols' punishment. Should he face the death penalty? Despite heated debates, they couldn't reach a consensus. The deadlock left everyone in suspense, wondering how this would all end. Enter U.S. District Judge Richard P. Match, known for his no-nonsense approach. With the jury unable to decide, the burden of sentencing fell squarely on his shoulders. Judge Match didn't hesitate. He looked Nichols in the eye and delivered a sentence that would echo through history. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. But Judge Match wasn't done. He tacked on additional sentences for Nichols' other crimes, all to be served separately. It was a clear message from the judge. This man would never again see the light of day as free. The Atlanta Courthouse Massacre left a lasting impact on the community. In the wake of the tragedy, security measures at courthouses nationwide were tightened to prevent similar incidents. Ashley Smith, the woman who Nichols had taken hostage, wrote a book about her ordeal, sharing her story of survival and resilience. The families of the victims struggled to cope with their loss, seeking justice and closure. The case also sparked a debate about the role of mental health in the criminal justice system, raising questions about how to address the needs of individuals with mental illness who may be at risk of violence. That's the tragic story of a desperate man who took innocent lives in a bid to escape courtroom justice. It's a chilling reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.